Hi everyone, welcome back to Goodbye Greens. I'm Alicia and today we are going to be making this paleo pizza crust. So if you want to see how I made this, just stay tuned. So for our ingredients, we're going to be using some almond meal, coconut flour. Now this is some of my homemade coconut flour back from a few videos ago. You can certainly use store-bought coconut flour as well. We're going to be using some olive oil, a couple of eggs, and then a little bit of water. Now for my seasonings, you can feel free to change these up. I'm going to be using some oregano and basil, and then salt and pepper, kosher salt, and then these are some red pepper flakes that I'm also going to add. So let's get started. Okay, so my pizza stone is preheating in the oven at 450 degrees. Now if you don't have a pizza stone, you can certainly use a baking sheet or anything like that. A pizza stone is just really helpful because especially if you preheat it, it will hold in some of that heat and help crisp the bottom. Now if you don't have a pizza stone, don't put your empty baking sheet into the oven. It doesn't need to be in there. So while that is happening, we have our almond meal already in our bowl. We're going to add in some coconut flour. We can add in our salt. Some basil. It's actually easier if I just shake this in here. Some oregano. And then some of our red pepper flakes. Now we're going to mix all of this together. This way we can evenly distribute the seasonings. Then we are going to add our 2 eggs. And some of our olive oil. We can stir all of this together. You can you want to maybe focus on the eggs first to fully beat them so that the egg yolk and the white combine. But once you have that, you can kind of add in the rest of your dry ingredients. As it begins to come together, you can add just a little bit of water. We're actually only going to use a small amount of water. This is to just help thin it out a little bit. So you can continue mixing until everything is well combined. Now I've teared off a piece of parchment paper and just put like 1/2 teaspoon of some olive oil on here. I'm just gonna spread this around. You don't have to do this step. The parchment paper will allow the dough not to stick, but I like it just for a little bit of the extra flavor and it helps get the bottom even crisper. So we're gonna take our dough and just scoop it right into the center. And then we are going to press it into whatever shape you want. My pizza stone is round, so it's easier if I press this into more of a round. If you're going to be placing this parchment paper onto a baking sheet, the back of a baking sheet, then you can press this into more of a square or rectangular type of shape. So you can either do this with your hands, that's what I'm going to do it with, or you can roll another piece of parchment paper on top and then press it out either with a rolling pin or something like that. I find my hands work just as well. Okay, so now that I have my pizza crust all the way rolled out, you want it to be only about 1/4 of an inch thick. Let me see if I can pull it up and show you. Maybe even a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch, closer to 1/8 of an inch. Now it's up to you. You can make this a little bit of a thicker crust. I like to have very thin type pizza crust. One, just because then I get to have more toppings because I get to eat a little bit of a bigger pizza. I get to have more pieces, even though it is still just the same amount of ingredients in a single crust recipe. So something like this will feed my husband and I, plus have a little bit of leftovers by me rolling it out this much so that it's only about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. So now we are going to pick up this parchment paper. You can actually pick it up just like this. That's the beauty of the parchment paper. And slide it right onto your pizza stone or your baking sheet in a 450-degree preheated oven. So I just pulled this out of the oven. It was in there for about 15 or 16 minutes at 450 degrees. Now you can see that the sides and the edges kind of the pizza crust have lightly browned. Let me carefully grab this so I don't burn myself. You can kind of see this is like one big sheet of dough now that it is completely cooked. You can see the edge. It is pretty thin. The center of the dough still does have a little bit of give, but because it is crusty, now my favorite kind of pizza is thin crust, very thin, very crispy crust. This is going to allow you to put toppings, sauce or barbecue sauce, whatever type of sauce you're going to put on, and pop it into the oven and not have the pizza completely disintegrate. So don't forget to check out the blog later this week. I will have a few recipes up of my favorite ways to use this pizza crust. Some of my favorite toppings along with my husband's. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you next Saturday. Bye.